The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Welcome to the System is Down.
The question of the day is transgenderism, question mark. That's it, because there's so many questions around this topic and idea, such as, should they get different bathroom treatment? Should they get different treatment and other things? Should they be able to join the sports teams of the gender that they identify as? Should others have to call them by their preferred pronouns? Is it a mental disorder? Is it the wrong brain put in the body? Is it so many things. So many things. So transgenderism, question mark. Let me know what you think on all the stuff that we talk about in this episode, because I appreciate you guys' input. But what's up, Downers? Welcome back to the least comfortable show on the web, The System is Down, where we talk about all the uncomfortable topics, the things that your family prays don't bring up around the Thanksgiving dinner table, the things like conspiracies, politics, religion, and just your general run-of-the-mill, triggering, politically incorrect topics. Today's is, as you could have guessed by now, transgenderism. We're doing another episode of TriPartisan Triggering, which is a series that we do an episode just off and on here and there whenever we have time, where I have a Libertarian, a Democrat, and a Republican come on to give their different sides and their different views on different hot-button topics. So that's what we're doing here today. I had Ryan, Mark, and John all back on to talk about transgenderism, and we're going to get into that just here in about 60 seconds or so. But before we do, patreon.com/The System is Down. That is where you can sign up for the Downers Club and get a bunch of bonus audio content. We do multiple episodes a week, and we give out free merch. We've got new merch designs in the store at tsidpod.com/shop. So a bunch of incentives. We do offensive hot takes on the news and current events. We do game shows and movie reviews and all sorts of fun stuff. So get over there to patreon.com/The System is Down and support us for as little as $5 a month. It is the lifeblood, the way that we keep ramping up production on this show, giving you guys bigger and better things like more video interviews and better quality video-wise and audio-wise, and just a bunch of other stuff. I've got a bunch of plans in the works to make this show a better listening and viewing experience for you guys, so patreon.com/The System is Down. Sign up for as little as a cup of coffee a month. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, there's 2 bonus episodes coming out today for members of the Downers Club that I did with this crew, with Mark, Ryan, and John, the Tripartisan Triggering folks. One we did before the episode where the latecomers got pranked by those of us who showed up on time, which was pretty funny. And then there's another one that we did afterwards, totally by accident, where we just kept talking and then ended up getting into some ridiculous stories of the 3 guys and their dating lives. So definitely don't want to miss that. Get into the Downers Club today. Patreon.com/The System is Down. That's it. That's it for the plugs. Let's get into this. This is a good, fun, long conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it. This is Tripartisan Triggering Transgenderism. Let's get weird. Well, welcome back to another episode of Tripartisan Triggering. It is the 2nd or 4th official episode, if you include the first 2. It's kind of like in Star Wars. If you include the prequels, it's 6. Who knows? Anyway, if you've listened to any of these before, you know what we're doing here. We've got Mark Clare from the Lions of Liberty podcast, who is bringing all the logic and stuff. And we've got John Schweppe here. John Schweppe, who is our...
Dan's not biased at all.
Not in the least. John Schweppe is our designated Republican, so he's going to be all Trump, Kanye, all that
exactly.
fun stuff.
I was hoping you'd mention Kanye because
I assume we're talking about Kanye the whole show.
He's the leader of my party now.
And finally, but not leastly, we have the quote-unquote Democrat, Ryan Beckenbaugh, who is here to... God only knows what he's here to do, but we're going to find out as we get into this. So how's everybody doing?
Great. Well,
silent responses are my favorite in audio podcasts.
I'll take this question and grab it.
I'll take this question and grab it by the whole horns and just say I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, Dan.
You're welcome. Mark,
I'm also doing great.
That's good. Mark, are you thrown off by Ryan not wearing a bathrobe this time and actually wearing a button-down
I am
shirt?
a little bit upset about it. It looks like it just came from a business meeting of some sort, as opposed to like he just curled up with his cat and his cigars.
He's just trying to convince us that he's
His
like
AR-15s.
that he's like some sort of intellectual authority by showing up to an audio podcast in a button-down shirt.
Well, I have to try to pretend like I'm a lawyer sometimes.
Yeah, Mark, you just got off another interview. How'd that go?
It went pretty good.
Was it short and sweet?
It wasn't short per se.
Was it long enough that you might hypothetically message us and say this guy is really long-winded? I'll be on in 15 minutes.
It's gonna take some real investigative work to figure out which interview this is based on both of our schedules.
Right.
So,
well,
but it's possible. It's possible I might have done that.
It's all right. This isn't probably coming out for a while, but John,
I like verbose guests because it just means I don't have to talk that much. But
for sure,
at some point you got to get on another show on the TriPartisan Trig. So,
John Ye West Schweppy, how's it going?
How long have you been
going
waiting
good.
to introduce him like that?
Oh, I introduced him
This is
like that
Nick
to the Kanye West bonus episode. If you listen to the show, that'd be really cool.
I did actually, but I forgot that.
Okay, cool.
It's going good. Just kind of hanging in there. Listen to Kanye because I'm a really big fan. I wasn't necessarily before, but getting
It's
out
now in
gold.
the Republican bylaws that you have to know the full catalog of Kanye's albums.
Right. Heard New Slaves today. I thought that track was like lit. Yeah.
Dude, no joking. I was listening to that before the show. That
There you
album,
go.
the whole Yeezus album I listened to today.
The Libertarian Party has the non-aggression principle. The Republican Party now has the con-aggression principle.
All right. That's enough Kanye fun. Speaking of the Yeezus album, Blood on the Leaves, I never actually listened to the sample in the background, the Blood on the Leaves.
I'm familiar.
Leaves.
Yep.
I've never actually listened to that, but I
Please
looked
sing
up
us the whole song. That'd be great.
I just need to clear my mind
never
now.
mind.
Okay. I will if you are. I didn't realize
4 minutes later.
I didn't realize how horrifying and I don't want to say grotesque, but like just jarring the imagery in that sample is. My God, like I can't believe that's even a song from that era. Like, wow. Like,
I'm not familiar with what
it's
it's sampled from.
Okay,
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, Blood on the Leaves. It's a song about strange fruit hanging. It's about black people being hanged from trees.
Right.
And their blood is literally on the leaves of the trees. And it's just like, I just got goosebumps right now. It's like, it's really moving. Like, it's like, holy shit. Oh my God.
Way to bring it down at the beginning of the episode with something completely unrelated.
Oh, come
on.
No, thank you guys all so much for coming back on. Ryan, hopefully I will come up with a topic tonight that will actually get you a little bit of, Democrat points. That'd be super awesome. I guess you did. Last time you brought in, climate change and all that right at the end. That was your sneak move to convince Bernie that you're still a Bernie supporter. So
yeah, I'm sure that'll really appeal to your vast majority of Democratic leaning listeners.
Ryan, I need to know that you're still behind me and my plan to bring healthcare to millions and millions of Americans.
I'm not just the 1%.
Kanye West has no idea what he's doing. His new album will be the worst album.
He's saying these things. The black community is offended. The progressive community is offended. The Jewish Brooklyn-born community is offended. And I hope you take those words back, Mr. West.
Wake up, Mr. West. I would love to hear like Bernie resampled
Doing
into
Mr. West, yes, please.
Yeah, or just into all of the skits from College Dropout or Late Registration, whichever one it is. And
in
just
fact,
like
every background vocal I'd like to be redone as Bernie Sanders.
Do the Gold
and I'm not
Digger.
gonna lie,
Mark Claire,
I'm
go
not
ahead.
gonna lie,
Mark, give us the Gold Digger intro from Bernie Sanders. She take my money.
You take my money? Is this a real show we're doing right now?
I have
take
no
my
idea.
money when I'm in need. Yes, she's a trifling friend indeed. Oh, she's a gold digger. Way over town. That digs on me.
All
Excellent.
right.
All right. Let's get into an actual topic.
Last thing about Kanye. Dan and I have both done a cover of Love Lockdown in our musical careers.
It's true.
Wow.
As I said on the forum, I've been a Kanye West fan, not since before it was cool, well after it was cool, but before it was heresy. So, I'm really proud of that. All right, so the topic.
It is. I mean, I know where you want to move on to other things, but
No,
really
keep
really
it going.
blowing
Let's
my
do this all
mind
night.
How the Kanye West thing is everywhere. Now I go to work. Like, I was following him before he started posting the MAGA hat and the Trump stuff, and before it got super political. And I was just following his sort of return to Twitter and enjoying. I'm still enjoying all of it, the philosophy and everything. I know so many people at work that are talking about it now. Like, I mean, today he had the TMC Live thing where he, said something about 400 years of slavery, and then being somewhat, not by will, but if it went on, he said something about if it went on for this long, it must have been, I forget the exact verbiage, so I don't want to say it, but it's amazing how it has gone beyond viral to the point where it went viral on the internet. Now it's viral into TMZ, and now it's viral into work and everywhere I go, and all in the matter of 2 weeks. And I think it really has demonstrated a lot of things, largely how people who used to love Kanye and still do love Kanye are so appalled simply by the idea that he would even express not even full support, although, I mean, wearing the hat seems fairly supportive, but, just saying anything okay about President Trump or Donald Trump or whatever, it makes someone a monster to so many people just because they see something good about the other side. And I have experienced this firsthand in Los Angeles. As you guys know, I'm single this year and I'm on the dating scene, and I see it firsthand how
Just throwing that out there. Plugs.
Yeah. And also I can be reached at anyway. Daniel, we'll put the phone number at the end of the show. That
Sounds good. I'll include it in the show notes and the show description. So
please do. For any ladies who love Bernie Sanders impressions. But I see so many people that they presume. So the reason that people see this as monstrous is because, as Scott Adams has sort of talked about, the Dilbert guy, who is now also known as alt-right for even not. If you don't hate Donald Trump a lot, you're like alt-right now, essentially, like Dan with his haircut.
Right.
I was going to say that if you don't explicitly say something negative, you are presumed to support him.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And they live in sort of a movie, a reality where Donald Trump is, and there's not a question about it, a racist, a misogynist, and represents white nationalism, and everybody knows that. So that's why, and from that perspective, I guess I can understand why you would be appalled by anyone displaying anyone but expressing anything but scorn for him. But what they don't realize is that the other half of the country, or the other people that don't see it in quite those terms, they might disagree with Donald Trump on many things, as I do. They might think he's bad on many things, but they don't think he's the ushering in the rise of white nationalism or anything remotely like that. So that's where there's just a major disconnect. And it truly, I've seen this through many conversations with people in the last few months. It really is like people are living in two completely separate realities.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that gets me is that, what was it, like 2 years ago? And way back when, everybody has always been like, Kanye West, he's an idiot. He's a moron. Like, he keeps giving these inflammatory, random statements that make no sense at all. Like, I like his music, or maybe I don't, but we can't trust him. Like, his word means nothing until he says something about Trump. Then it's like, Kanye, what are you doing, man? Your word has so much value. It's so important, and so much, sway on the culture. What are you doing?
But you know what? It does. And him comparing himself to Trump, the reaction to him comparing himself to Trump has exactly proven that he is correct. Trump can say whatever he wants, and it sends shockwaves throughout the airwaves and even through workplaces. And so the fact that Kanye was able to do the exact same thing as Trump by saying we are like the same, like we do the same thing. I mean, he's right. How is he wrong?
Yeah.
And he also said, like, one big thing he liked about Trump, or took away from the Trump as a positive, is that it made him realize he can be president. And that might sound ridiculous, but how ridiculous did it sound?
That sounds like a knock on Trump, personally, I think.
Right? Yeah, he's like, if this guy can do it. But it's sort of true in the sense that, forget the specifics of Kanye West being president, although honestly, I don't think it's as impossible as some people might think.
I'm in.
I don't think
It's got my
it's
vote.
a great message to send to people that the reality, the constraints that you think we have on reality aren't really there, and you really can build your own future and change the world and do things completely differently. And for better or worse, Donald Trump has done many things very differently to get where he is and in the execution of his office. Now, maybe the end policies aren't that different, and that's where my criticism would lie. But you can't deny that I think the cultural significance of Trump is significant, and one for better or worse, it's significant. And I think Kanye West is the kind of person that can have that significant sort of influence in a way too. I mean, the fact that we're all talking about him right now, the fact that I've been hearing people at work talking about him and people on the street talking about him for the past week is proof of that.
Right. Yeah, and I don't want to spend the whole night on Kanye West because I will not allow you guys to once again snowball this whole thing based off of like some stupid
the
intro.
only thing I researched, so.
But John, you've been quiet. Your name, Johnny West, has been Johnny West has been mentioned a couple times, so I'll give you a chance to respond to that. Go ahead. You've got 30 seconds.
No, I think Mark stumbled on something there. Like when you look at like Trump, I think a lot of people would say that he was speaking for these, forgotten voices, kind of like, the people that aren't represented in Washington. And I think now you're seeing Kanye speaking out, and there's kind of this like establishment, like what's acceptable in both the entertainment industry, what's acceptable on TV, in the media, etc. And he's kind of breaking from that. And again, giving voice to people who, I would argue would be voiceless before. So I do think there's like this similarity. And I think it's really, I don't know, for me, it's not that Kanye's wearing a MAGA hat.
And that's time.
hold on. But it's not just that he's wearing a MAGA hat, which I love, obviously, but it's that he's, voicing how important it is to be able to have different opinions and to be able to love your brother, even if, you disagree on something. And I think that's really important because we're getting so far away from that in 2018.
Sure. All right. That concludes the Kanye West portion of this debate. I thank you guys so much for your...
Who won that section?
When I'm in need.
I think Kanye West did all around, so...
He always wins. That's all he does.
Kanye West can't
Dan,
lose because he doesn't accept failure.
If you get Kanye on the podcast, you have to let me be on so I can...
Dan gets Kanye before I do, I quit. And I'll just work first system of the system is down.
There you go.
I almost did it again.
Yep. All right. So I had an actual topic. It's completely unrelated to anything that we just talked about. It's a little off the wall, but I wanted to try and think up something that might get maybe some disagreement from you guys because there was way too... like I said in the bonus episode, last week we talked about guns for like an hour to an hour and a half when I had a bunch of, different topics that I wanted to talk about, and we all basically agreed. So there wasn't really a good discussion, yes, but there wasn't any real pushback on it. So I wanted to come up with something that might be a little bit more controversial and might get you guys not necessarily riled up, but at least disagreeing a little bit with each other. Ryan, I'm looking at you. Okay, so what I want to talk about tonight is transgenderism.
Oh my God.
No.
I've never got as a collective groan.
Yep,
Woo!
that's what I was looking
All
for.
right.
Perfect. So
All right.
let's start it
Dan,
off.
Dan, I've been watching a lot of Jordan Peterson videos lately.
Oh my
No, I'm well suited to.
My groan is fake. I'm actually interested in talking about this.
All right, cool. So let's start with, we can start wherever you want. We can start with bathrooms or whatever. I mean, that's like the thing that everybody goes to is this whole transgender bathroom issue. I know it's kind of died down now. It's kind of an older topic, but what were you guys' stances on that? Whoever wants to go first. Actually, no. Let's have some order here. Mark, I'll let you go first.
You mean on like Trump's whole executive order about transgender bathrooms, or
sure, yeah, just
Just
transgender
the
bathrooms in general.
His
thoughts.
executive order wasn't about bathrooms. It was about the military.
That's what I thought.
Oh, well, he made some statement about bathrooms then. I mean, 6 months ago or something, maybe.
Mark,
There was something he said about the bathrooms.
Mark, I trust you. I hadn't heard anything about transgender bathrooms from Trump, but if you say it, I'm going to assume it's probably true because I don't care
It
about
was
any
like
of
early
this
in the administration, but
What if we
Anyway.
can let's try to keep this sociological and like cultural and not political? I think that would be interesting.
On tripartisan triggering, we're going to keep it not political. Cool,
Well,
man.
no, it's going to be political, but not like what did Trump say? Let's dissect what Trump said.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, this is
Right.
all just
I
what
just
we
didn't know if
think.
that's what he was referring to specifically or whatever.
Also, it's really douchey to tell someone else how to answer the question.
Ouch. Yeah, the way you were criticizing yourself.
This is why. This is why you're
Ryan.
Ryan. This is why you're the worst Democrat ever. You're even like giving yourself notes on how you actually, respond to questions. I can't handle that.
Mark, I'm sorry. Please.
Mark, go ahead.
No apologies. Well, for a libertarian, it's actually a very easy answer. Property rights. And this is cultural as well, because in certain areas, now there's no law about this in California. I go to a lot of bars, a lot of restaurants that have, they wouldn't be called transgender bathrooms. They just say they're whatever gender bathrooms or I forget what, unisex bathrooms. Those are all over the place.
Mark
And a lot
lives
of
in
places
California.
I live in California, in Los Angeles. A lot of places like to even tout that we have, unisex bathrooms, and fine by me. I don't care. I just want to pee, so I don't really care. But I mean, when I say unisex bathrooms, those are usually the private bathrooms where you go in and lock the door. And when it comes to, but basically when it comes to this issue for me, it's really comes down to property rights, and whatever the property norms are. I mean, individual businesses should be able to decide what kind of bathrooms they have, as should. Now, I admit it does become trickier when we're talking about, say, public schools or public parks and that sort of thing, because now we have sort of a tragedy of the commons issue where we being whoever, I guess, contributes to that property, own it, and no one's ever going to all agree. And that's where things get very tricky. So I guess the solution for me long term would be less of the public stuff and more of the private stuff. But that's all I got in bathrooms.
Sure. So how does the public sphere, how are they supposed to maneuver through that?
We just fight about it, I guess. I don't see any real solution other than, I mean, in reality, in our current landscape, honestly, I would say just keep it as local as possible. I think that's like the best way to deal with it in our, in our current context.
Right.
I certainly don't think the federal government should have a stance on bathrooms and who goes in them, or even really ideally state governments. I mean, I keep that to the most local levels of government as possible. I think that's kind of as close as we can get to, replicating private property or what would become sort of collectively owned property and that sort of thing. So I think that's kind of the best we can do.
So you're saying that the government should not be mandating that every school have a special flowery bathroom for transgender kids. And
It has to be flowery.
okay, even special is demeaning somehow, but
that would be my stance. The federal government, or even state governments should not be mandating
sure,
such things.
which is I totally agree with, because I come from a school in a small town, and John, you come from the same school, where it's like the odds of us even having a transgender kid are slim to none. So they're going to mandate for a bathroom that is not used by anyone.
Now, in fairness, I'll try to play devil's advocate here. Maybe part of the reason you won't see a transgender kid there is because of the culture or the rules in place that don't condone themselves to a transgender kid. So maybe one kid who might be is more afraid to be that there. So I'm just putting that out there as, another aspect that I can see.
Sure. No, you're absolutely right.
Existing.
Ryan, go ahead.
So if we're talking about trans issues in bathrooms, I think that there's two main things that I would think about. I mean, other than obviously talking about obviously, I think the core of every discussion about trans is that some people honestly want to say, or honestly are asking the question, is I guess transgenderism, is that the word to use? Is being trans actually a real thing? And maybe then the next question is, and if so, like, how obligated are we to, if at all, to try to accommodate for that person based on their state of being trans? If we want to talk specifically about bathrooms, I guess I was a little bit weirded out by the people who just assume that anyone different from them in any sort of sexual orientation or gender-based way are by definition predators. I mean, they seem, the conversation about this, or the hysteria part of the conversation was, men are just going to say that they identify as a woman go into a woman's restroom and either assault or peep or whatever the women, and presumably, I guess there didn't seem to be much concern from men about women saying they identify. I mean, like the whole basis of the fear was just this idea that, yeah, I just think it was a complete misunderstanding of what trans is. I mean, yes, if a man just lies about this issue to get into a bathroom to harass or assault someone, then that man will be prosecuted and is morally wrong for assaulting someone. I mean, that's the bottom line. What's stopping?
Which would happen in a straight men's bathroom or a woman's bathroom if a woman has. If either of them have attraction to the same sex or even pedophilia or whatever, like there's obviously plenty of chance for that.
This issue is not going to stop a sexual assaulter from going into a bathroom to sexually assault someone. It's not like you just have to slip by the guard at the door and then all of a sudden you can do whatever you want inside. I mean, I understand that like I understand that like going to the bathroom is like a private thing where you're like very exposed, like both like literally your clothes are in somewhat off fashion or they're somewhat off.
If you're doing it right,
if you're doing it right. and there's also there's probably some sort of evolutionary basis to this to like I'm like in a vulnerable state, I'm going to the bathroom. Like I get that, but like just this idea that it was going to it's I hate to use the word offensive, but it's kind of an offensive idea that anyone different than me, I'm going to assume that they're going to somehow sexually assault me. And furthermore, it's just stupid. I mean, well then what? Do we need to have a gay male bathroom and a gay female bathroom? Do we need to have changing bathrooms based on what you're interested in sexually? I mean,
even if there's a gay male bathroom, it doesn't mean that if you go into that bathroom that sexual predators are allowed to assault you.
I feel like the more interesting conversation will be what is trans? What is it? What does it mean? And is it a condition? Is it sort of
we'll get there
brain issue, or is it like
John,
an actual thing?
John, what do you think?
Let me just say one more thing. As it comes to public accommodations, I think that this is probably where Mark and potentially John and I will disagree. I do think that there's like such a thing as like things are open to the public, therefore they need to somewhat reasonably accommodate the public in its entirety. I don't know what it's like to be a trans person, and presumably none of you people do either. So I guess I don't know what it's like to be forced into going to something. I mean, if I go into the men's restroom, I'm to some extent broadcasting to the world that I'm a man. But if I was a trans person, that would really psychologically perturb me. So I can't really say what that effect actually is on me. Sure. Presumably a trans person would be able to tell me.
Absolutely. John, your take. Bathrooms.
On bathrooms specifically.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is an issue we have to definitely handle with care because it's not like an easy yes or no answer.
You're in the right place for that.
Yeah. Well, there's a conflict of rights
from the same podcast that had Bernie Sanders doing Kanye West covers that we bring you.
we're not too concerned about care. Yes.
But I do think one thing, and Ryan actually mentioned the word public accommodations. When we talk about bathrooms, I think it's interesting that that's the word that people use, and that's what we're talking about. And I know why that is. It's because when talking about the transgender issue, bathrooms are probably the most sympathetic public accommodation you can think of. But we're not just talking about bathrooms. When you look at the letter of the law, what would public accommodations apply to? It's locker rooms, it's showers, it's sports teams, it's Title IX situations in schools. And it's a very complicated issue. So you have the story, and I think a lot of people took issue with it, but you had the story of the Texas wrestler who was a trans male, so born female. And there was Texas law that didn't allow the individual to wrestle with the men. So the individual wrestled with the women despite having taken testosterone and all that, and he won the state title back to back. And now to that individual's credit, they wanted to wrestle in the male division, but I think that's a situation that's going to happen a lot. And if by the letter of the law, gender identity is reflected as the same as sex, that it's, you are, if you declare you're female, you are female, then you are going to have a lot of situations that I think actually come into conflict with the rights of women. And so that's where, like, I just don't think the bathroom thing, we talk about bathrooms, but specifically like showers, like I would be very uncomfortable, like with, if I had an 8-year-old daughter going into the shower at the YMCA, it would be very uncomfortable knowing that there could be, individuals with penises in there. No, I mean, that's just like, as a parent, that would be, but now with the ultra, how far we've gone on this issue, I'm a huge bigot for even thinking that. And so I think that's where we just need to kind of like take a step back. Like, I know the bathroom issue was like huge in 2016 because of North Carolina, but it's a lot bigger than that. And the effect of these, they call them, non-discrimination statutes, they're actually really significant and can have a huge impact on the rights of, it's not just rights are good and no one will get hurt by that. There's a conflict of rights at play.
Yeah, well, let's get into the bigger issue. We probably started in the wrong space. Ryan, you're the one who brought up, is it a thing? So do you want to give your thoughts on that?
Sure. So maybe not the first time that it was talked about. I mean, I'm sure that when it was first brought up in sort of like the field of psychology, it was called something like horribly. It was probably considered just super messed up. I know that some people still are using.
It was called being super messed up. Freud,
right?
I believe Freud's term. It's quite
penis hate.
I think that people are using the term gender dysphoria disorder, maybe. I guess the question is it a disorder or is it just this thing that's fine? And I guess, to be honest, the way I live my life, I don't think that the answer to that question really matters to me, because at the end of the day, if a trans person, if I get corrected on like using the wrong pronouns or something like that, I guess I'm just gonna, out of respect for that person as a human being, I'm gonna call them what that person prefers to be called, just because I guess that's just kind of what I would. It just seems like the right thing to do, I guess. I understand the Jordan Peterson argument of like, you probably shouldn't criminalize refusing to call someone what they want to be called.
You probably shouldn't,
and like, I think
you definitely shouldn't.
Well, I was saying that, I guess, a little bit of or a little bit of personality. I don't know. You definitely shouldn't criminalize it. I don't believe in hate speech. I don't think that's a real thing. Well, I suppose speech can be hateful, but I don't think that hate speech as a term is a real thing. I don't really care. What was the question? Oh, so is trans a real thing? People, if a person with penis identifies as a woman, whatever that actually means, I don't really know what that means, because I don't necessarily know what it means to identify as a man. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to be facetious. I really don't really know. I don't think I identify as a man. I think, other than the fact that if you were to ask me, are you a man or a woman, I would say a man. I guess if I felt like I was a woman, whatever that means, but I was in a man's body, like, I would prefer to change my body to fit, and that's fine with me. I also think, just one last thing with the bathrooms, I think that what people are really envisioning is a trans person who is either very early on in their transition, or a trans person who is like, a hot mess. Like, like there were a couple people in Iowa City that they were just a mess. It was just a mess. And like, I think that what you're really like,
explain.
I think that a lot of times.
What do you mean? Just
it was
guys who are like
completely bald on the top of their head, and this long, gross, greasy hair. Oh. Clearly a man, like male, and then just wore a dress and carried some weird like umbrella. And it was just like, I think that's what people are envisioning. I think they're envisioning this like gross looking person who's like,
Well, that's the
very
concern, is that people
half-assed.
take advantage of the situation.
well, yeah, and if they're going to take advantage of the situation in order to commit a crime, they'll be prosecuted for the crime. That's kind of that was my point there.
Sure, yeah.
I think that I think that we have all used the bathroom at the same time that a trans person has used the bathroom, and you couldn't tell, and it never occurred to you, and that is probably a norm. That's probably more often what it's like, as opposed to some just abomination walking in a dress. I mean, like, it's probably, and honestly, like, I'm not gonna lie, it's probably pretty transphobic for me to be saying that sort of stuff, and referring to people as abominations, especially given my condition. But
My condition.
I'm rambling at this stage. I guess I don't really understand it. But I'm willing to not understand it and still treat people with the respect that they're asking me to.
Right, and I think we could go around the group and everybody would agree, don't be a dick. I don't think that's hard to come to the conclusion on. If anybody disagrees, please chime in. But one of the real issues on whether or not it is a thing is whether or not it is like a mental disorder or a mental condition, which you addressed a little bit, Ryan. Do you feel like it is some sort of disorder, or do you think it is just a thing that should be accepted?
Well, I mean, by definition, it's abnormal. And I don't know if that means anything. I mean, usually people who are born with male sexual characteristics and genes, I also identify that way. So to deviate from that norm is by definition abnormal. Although I'm not using the word abnormal and then to use its negative sort of connotation. I don't know. It's just, I have some philosophical concerns about it. Like, I don't really, if gender is a social construct, then it shouldn't matter. I don't know. I think it's probably a real thing.
Okay. Well, we'll jump over to somebody else, and if you have more issues, more arguments, feel free to chime in. But Mark, what's your take on mental disorder or not?
Well, it's definitely real in the sense that people identify that way because that's why we're talking about this. So it's real in that sense. I don't know. I'm kind of in a weird place where I find myself stuck between agreeing with Jordan Peterson sort of on it and agreeing with the postmodernist like Thaddeus Russell view of it as well, because I really have an issue with calling anything a disorder that because
the listeners who don't know who you're talking about, can you give like their two side points, like who you're referring to?
Sure, so Jordan Peterson, as many know, is a professor who got some heat for claiming that he would defy a Canadian law that was going to force people to use certain pronouns. Now he has even said, like, I have no problem calling people a preferred pronoun. The reason I spoke out is because I'm opposed to the law, because that confines speech and the issues with speech and meaning and et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, he's big on just, saying, talking about the biological aspect, and that, yes, we have clearly defined what a man is. We have clearly defined what a woman is. Whereas Thaddeus Russell identifies with sort of more of a postmodernist view, and postmodernism, and I am not an expert on it. My subnation comes from his subnation. So just for full disclosure there. But as far as I understand it, the basic idea is we choose our own fate. We choose our own definitions about our own lives. And that should be allowed and encouraged, because that is, the way to allow the most people into happiness. I am probably, not getting definitions wrong. I would probably get a definition wrong that many postmodernists might correct me on. But I believe that's a fair summary of the ideas in instead of a general way.
Sure.
And really, the postmodernism thing that for Thaddeus comes from, and he's talked about this, it comes from when they first started calling being gay a disorder, and they would put people into prisons for this and to mental institutions. They would even do this for political reasons with other segments of the population. So anytime we call something a disorder and try to link that to mental health, you might say I get triggered, because I immediately jump to this very real and very scary situation where disorder goes to mental health, goes to rights being taken away. So I hesitate to call it a disorder in that sense. I do think that, there's a reason that a lot of transgender children, a lot of transgender people end up committing suicide. They have extremely high suicide rates. So I think that's, and now maybe part that is just society's reaction and then them dealing with how they feel about themselves with society. But I don't know how much of that is society morphing them. I mean, you have people now who will give their children, their 8-year-old children, who says, a kid who says he
Freaking
thinks
A,
he's
Mark,
a girl,
you're bringing up all the topics that were supposed to be different conversations.
these are coming later. Okay.
But yeah,
Well,
continue. You're fine.
I didn't see your show outline, okay? So I gotta hit on whatever I think I gotta hit on. I can
Continue.
see the danger in accepting it to the sense of a 4-year-old says he's a girl, so you give him hormone blockers and you start dressing him up, and 10 years later he realizes, oh my God, I'm so confused because now my hormones are different. I didn't evolve, I didn't grow as I would have normally with this intervention, and now I really messed up in that, and now I'm going to have a much higher suicide rate. So while for the reasons I outlined, I don't like the idea of calling it a disorder. I have issues with it as well. When it comes to like adults that go through childhood and become adults and just decide I want to dress like a woman or dress like a man and be called a him or her, no issues there at all. You're an adult now, and as long as you're not hurting anybody or forcing anybody to do anything, including call you a him or her, I would do it because I don't care. And if that's what you want to be called, again, just don't be a dick. Sure, I'll call you that. But
Right.
I think there is, and I'm sure it's on your list of 25 follow-up questions. But yeah,
There are very few, and you addressed a lot of them. So
there's I addressed them all. There's a very big difference between what an adult does and how we like raise a child and how we speak to them about these issues. So
How much freedom we give kids, really. I mean, kids
Yeah.
don't get to make life-changing decisions. They just don't.
right.
let's get into John before we get into kids. Into the kid topic. The kid topic.
Speaking of sexual predators,
John, transsexualism, or whatever the word is for it. Your thoughts on whether or not it's a thing, whether or not it's a mental disorder.
Well, gender dysphoria is definitely real. I don't think there's a question about that. Whether
Clearly
you want
there
to
is,
call it
because they just said otherwise.
well, yeah. I mean,
It all depends how you define it. I mean,
Sure.
right.
Words.
I think it's to say that people aren't necessarily like people are clearly suffering from something, right? And whether you want to call it a disorder or whatever, I think the Mark kind of hit on the right notes there. When it comes to adults, I'm less I'm less concerned with it. I mean, honestly, like if you're 30 and you decide that you want to dress up like a woman and call yourself a she, that's your right. I don't think that necessarily gender identity is deserving of protected status under the law in the same way that sex is, because I don't think that objectively, I guess I don't recognize it as real. But I think people should have the right to, they can think about themselves the way they want to. But when it comes to children, and I understand you want to touch on that, so I won't get too far into it. But I think that's where the real crux of transgenderism as a political issue comes down, because that's where all these laws are going to affect. And that's where I think there's like this weird obsession among the more militant progressives that are pushing the transgender movement. They are very obsessed with indoctrinating kids about there being 57 genders. And this is the kind of stuff that I personally take deep issue with.
Hey, Dan Smots here. I'm taking a second to interrupt myself talking to talk about myself because, I don't get paid a penny for the hours and hours that I put into creating this show for you guys in your greedy little ears, and I've got a family to feed. To make that happen, I run my own media business called Goulash Media. If you have a need in anything from video production to graphic design to audio production and beyond, you can get it all for a painfully fair price at Goulash Media. In video, I do weddings, music videos, commercials, pageants, plays, etc., etc., etc. For design, I do photo editing, album art, logos, branding, business cards, merchandise, you name it. For audio, I do engineering, production, editing, jingles, and, well, podcasts. So if you've got a media need of any kind, or if you'd just like to give a little something back and help keep my children fed, check out all the endless options at my website, goulashmedia.net. That's goulash, Goulash, media.net, where we cater to the little guy with the big vision. Okay.
Now, still on the topic of whether or not mental disorder, of course that raises the question of people who
Can I respond real quick?
you
Something?
sure can.
Just this idea that I do as the liberal here, quote liberal. I do think that it's important to say that we aren't talking about people who just want to go put on a dress and flaunt around.
yeah.
I mean,
Right.
we're talking about people who want to who they in from their perspective they are a woman and they want to be a
They're
woman.
in the wrong
Want-
body.
yeah, they want to truly be a woman, not just like put on a dress. And I know that you didn't mean it in a condescending way, but like just to be clear, like that is we're not like
Right.
transvesticism, I guess, is like Eddie Izzard. He is a man. He identifies as a man. He likes wearing women's clothes,
Mhm.
like putting on a dress, but I mean, it's more than that. So, and the reason it's more than that is the reason why it's an issue. It's why
Right.
people have such a hard time with it because it just so definitionally conflicts with what our basic ideas are. I mean, sex is the first way that we split the human race up into categories, male or female. I mean, it immediately cuts it in half. And there's nothing. I don't think there's any other category that more cleanly starts categorizing people than
Sure.
sex.
Yeah,
And
oh, go ahead.
I just want to jump in real quick because that reminded me of something. But something I find really strange too is that, I think we've strived for equality between the sexes, at least in opportunity, right? And one of the things over the last 20, 25 years that I actually think has been a good thing is, it's become much more acceptable. If a woman wants to shoot guns, that's great. If a man wants to be interested in, interior design, that's great. And I think as a society, we've become more accepting of these things. What I find strange about the idea of gender identity is that we're, especially when it comes to kids, actually, and we'll get into that, but, the idea that, if a 4-year-old likes the color pink and wants to play with dolls, that's a sign that, he's a girl. But we've grown up with these ideas that these preferences and this don't define what we are as a gender. So now all of a sudden, when it comes to transgenderism, we apply these stereotypes to children. And I just find that to be very, there's a huge disconnect there.
Well, it's almost reinforcing gender norms in a way when
It is.
they say, well, he likes ponies and princesses, and that makes him a woman. Well, it might just make
he doesn't
him
fit in the box, so he must be a girl.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Maybe he's a gay kid. Maybe he's a kid who just likes those things and is just a kid. Like, I think that a lot of pushing all of that as meaning transgenderism or meaning he's in the wrong body is quite the leap.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
it's an unhealthy leap. I mean, it's like going backwards. We've like John was saying, we've gone away from gender norms in so many ways where it's acceptable for a woman to be an engineer. It's acceptable for a man to, I don't know. What was your example? Paint,
Interior
paint flowery
design. I don't know. I was thinking,
Quilting.
quilting. Yeah, these are all great things. But when it comes to just why do we then take those things from a lot of the same people who would defy gender norms? Someone else defies one as a child, and now it has to change what they are as a gender.
Yeah, it's
and then they want to change their bodies to conform with. I mean, and that's actually when I mentioned briefly that I have a slight sort of philosophical issue with it. That's what it is. It's that if the progressive sort of identity based or whatever movement wants to say a woman can do anything, period, and a man can do anything, period. Like, well, then that has to be true, and it doesn't. The fact like their interests and their likes and their affinities should not affect their identity because it's supposed to not matter.
Yeah.
So if it does matter, it's almost like you're saying that that's not true then. Like, which is it? Are women a collection of affinities and tastes and likes and behaviors? Because it seems to me that if you're truly like a by the book progressive, you should say, yeah, my son likes, let's see, cooking, sewing, every single classical feminine thing you can think of, and that doesn't change anything about him.
Mhm.
It's just fine. I mean, I do disagree to some extent that it's totally fine for a man to be an interior decorator because, I mean, let's be real. Like, you all know the looks and the little snide comments that get made about that sort of stuff. So, I mean, it's definitely an ideal to strive for, but like, I mean, and even like the woman that shoots guns, like it's like, oh, that's really hot because that's like a guy thing and she's into it. It's like, I mean, even there, like that's still kind of not. It should. I mean, the ideal seems to me to be it's not even a thing worth remarking upon. But as long as we're still going to be like, oh yeah, she's a tomboy, that's awesome. Well, if it's awesome, it's because it's a woman displaying interest in traditionally masculine things, and masculine is better. There, I don't know. I just, I don't know how to.
Well, I'm gonna cut in, and we're like kind of getting off the topic that we were on. And actually, when I tried to change topic, it was like, well, still within the whether or not it's a mental disorder thing. And Ryan, actually, your cut in there was a good segue to that, which was like, I don't know, 10 minutes ago. Thanks, guys. But yeah, you said, this is not a person who just throws on a dress. This is not a person who, likes pink or likes to play with Barbie dolls or whatever. This is a person who feels like they are in the wrong body. And of course, that raises the obvious question, like, what about these people who are, I know that it's very few, but you see these videos of people who, like the middle-aged man who thinks he's a 6-year-old and he identifies as a 6-year-old, or I watched a video earlier today, which was not because I was even looking up stuff on this. It just showed up in my Facebook feed. So this guy whose girlfriend identifies as a toddler. Is there like, is that considered a mental disorder, or are they born in the wrong body or born too early, or how do you guys take that? Ryan, I'll start with you.
That's weird, but I guess
you said it.
if you truly are mentally not progressed along with like what your age would implicate, you ought to be progressed to. I mean, if the person's actually 30 and they are actually developed and mature, and they're
not
just
even just
saying,
age, but like people who identify as something completely off the wall, like an animal or something. Do you think that is a mental disorder?
Otherkin?
Sure.
I mean, otherkin seems to be just a. I mean, I don't know what it means. I don't even know what it means to identify as a wolf and go on free runs through the forest.
It means
I've looked
too much time on DeviantArt. That's
I mean, I've looked into otherkinism quite a bit, mostly just to troll it online. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's a real. Sorry, Dan.
Well, there are people who are saying that they have that. Do you think that is a mental disorder or not?
They truly think they're a toddler, or if they truly believe that they are. I just don't have the qualifications.
I mean, in fairness, we have guys who feel like they are something different than, like, men or women who believe that they are something different than what they are. I'm not giving an opinion on it necessarily, but like they
I mean,
feel
I guess
like,
the question you're asking is where's the line of
right? Yeah, I don't want to say slippery slope, but like, is there a line, or do we just say, hey, it's all fair game? You're an adult. You can not pretend. Sorry.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Sure.
You can feel like you're this or not. At what point do you say you need help?
If you want to, I don't tell anyone they need help. That's not my business. I don't give a shit.
Sure.
I will make fun of you, probably mostly in private amongst friends. I will judge you.
Are you talking about transgenders or the other?
If I'm
that you're making fun of. Okay, all right.
I happen to not generally make fun of trans people because I feel like they probably get enough shtick. I mean,
you think these people don't?
I was gonna say,
or these wolves or whatever they identify as.
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever. I don't know. Maybe Mark can say something. Don can say something.
Mark, go ahead.
I just feel like I don't have the qualifications to opine on. It seems ridiculous.
Does anybody have the qualifications? I mean,
I'll get a wolf on the show.
Really
I'll get a wolf on the show. They have to have the qualifications.
What if I feel like I'm a pterodactyl? I don't know. Like, but there is a point that Dan kind of alluded to there, that if we're going to say it's that, someone can decide that they're a woman when they have a penis, then shit, why can't I decide I'm a pterodactyl?
Right.
Why not? What is the difference, other than maybe we can say men define gender, or like human beings defined gender, so human beings can redefine their own genders. But then heck, human beings define animals too. So why can't I redefine what kind of animal I am?
Right.
I don't know.
And then I can't say no, science defines species, because then someone else will say, well, science defines sex.
Yep.
And I guess if I want to be consistent, I have to say that that's fine. But I mean, I'm not gonna. We can't expect every restaurant to have a outdoor grassy area for these wolves to go take a shit in.
Why not?
But that's why it comes down to, like, look, this is America, okay, greatest country in the world, etc. And if you're an adult and you want to be a wolf,
America, greatest country in the world, etc. John Schweppe.
if you want to be a wolf and you're an adult, I don't really care. But what I think is essential about America is that if I'm not you and I see a human grazing in the field, I have a right to say, what is that human doing in the field grazing and shitting? And that doesn't make you a wolf just because you think you're a wolf. And that's why, like, I really think it comes down to, and so you can make the argument, like, is transgenderism a thing? Is transracial a thing? If you remember Rachel Dolezal, like, thinking that she was black and having to resign from the NAACP, and she's convinced that she's black. Look, I think that this is where it comes to, how are we going to define this legally? And there are objective things, objective protected statuses. Like, we need to protect people based on race, religion, sex. But, like, identity, this, like, personal, like, idea of what you are, and that if you believe you are something, therefore everyone else must not only respect you, but, like, give you the rights of whatever thing you decide you are. I think that's really problematic legally. And, you can take it beyond the transgenderism thing. I try not to do that because I think, people think you're just being absurd. But it is true. Like, I mean, if we have the ability to determine whatever we are and that everyone else has to acknowledge us as whatever we are, that is really problematic in a civil society.
What if you identify as something that nobody's ever heard of? Like, I identify as this other sentient being, and you're not calling me that, so that's illegal.
There is such a thing as there is such a thing as angel and demonkin.
Oh dear, this goes deeper than I thought.
But you know what? But a lot of the actual discussions about trans issues are, should the NHS have to pay for gender reassignment surgery? I don't know. Probably. I mean, if someone's suffering psychologically because they feel that they're in the wrong body, and performing such a surgery alleviates that psychological suffering, then how is that different from any other sort of aid for probably a different topic, Dan?
No, good topic. Good topic.
People are allowed to modify their bodies the way they see fit. Now, the question of whether public funds should be used for that is another question, but people modify their bodies all the time. People get tattoos. People fork their tongues. People drill holes into their, well, that's a really old person way of saying it. People gauge their ears. People get studs implanted in them. I mean, yeah, but you're going to have to deal with the social consequences that come along with it. And that's true. But I mean, if someone wants to get a tail surgically implanted in them, maybe a doctor shouldn't do that. I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. I really truly don't have it.
The big question is whether or not. Well, the big question is whether or not the doctor should have to do it, like, based on, social. Is it covered in my insurance policy for me to get a tail if that makes me feel like I am more myself and I'm less likely to be depressed or commit suicide? I mean, that type of thing is as absurd as it sounds. And if you brought this up like 5 years ago, we'd be like, what are you even talking about? But this is like, these are now the situations that we have to deal with.
Well, and look, in talking about that specific thing, would a doctor be compelled to do it? Taking these non-discrimination laws, if you apply gender identity as a protected class, the answer is yes. So, like, if you're a doctor who believes, you know what, I actually don't think that physically transforming someone's body is in their best interest long term. I actually think there's data to suggest that it might lead to a higher rate of suicide, et cetera, which there's a lot of things out there. You don't have the right to believe that because it's a protected class. And so what ends up happening is that doctors would be compelled, or it would be discrimination. And this is
you have the right to believe that, but if someone seeks a medical procedure or medical prescription that's going to help them, then perhaps your oath should compel you to do it. I mean, compel, I use differently than you do because I'm talking about a Hippocratic oath. You're allowed to believe whatever you want to believe.
But if let's say you're a doctor that believes that, I know nothing about medicine, so I'm just literally spitballing, but there's open heart surgery has certain risks, and then there's a different kind of procedure, and you think the different kind of procedure is better for the outcomes long term, but the general thing is to do the open heart surgery, and you say, well, I'd rather do the other thing. I think that's in the best interest of my patient. Can you be compelled to go against what you believe is the best interest? I mean, isn't that violating the Hippocratic Oath?
No, I think the patient is supposed to decide. The patient gets to decide what procedure is done on him or her, or Z, for using gender not neutral pronouns.
Well, what if I feel like I was born inside of a drug addict's body? Does the doctor have the obligation to give me all the prescription medication that I require to? I know I'm going to extremes here, but at what point is the doctor not obligated to do that? Mark, weigh in. I know you've been trying to.
I was just weighing in, but I had put myself on mute like an idiot.
Okay.
But yeah, well, if the doctor feels that it would harm the patient, then he would be obligated not to do it, really, or if it wouldn't, be best for him. Sure. I guess it's who's defining what the patient needs. Well, is it Dan defining what the patient needs? Right. It's like I need 6 bottles of OxyContin. Like that's what I need, doc. So
don't bring up Alfie. Weigh in on like the tail and all the just body mod. Like if I feel like I'm somebody who needs to have tattoos all over my body, is it somebody else's obligation to make sure that happens?
I wouldn't call a tattoo a medical procedure, but I guess, is it that different than putting on a tail? I don't know. You're doing something to your body that doesn't necessarily harm it. I don't know. Maybe there are studies that showed any of these things could be harmful.
It depends on who you go to.
I certainly, I would, I'm not a doctor. I haven't taken the Hippocratic Oath, but from what I understand from watching the Cosby Show as I grew up, the Hippocratic Oath only
different topic, Mark. Different topic.
Only entitles you. It's your oath to help a patient in medical need, and I'm not sure if anyone can display medical need for a tail or a tattoo. I do think people should be allowed to get tails or tattoos if they want.
Or even like breast augmentation. Like if somebody feels like, if they feel depressed because they don't have that, and that's the thing that will treat them and make them feel better about themselves, that will give them that dose of encouragement. Like, does the doctor have the obligation to carry out that?
No.
But I'd argue that's a
subjective. That's a subjective view of the patient. That's not necessarily what the doctor believes to be medically accurate, or else he probably would do it. So I mean, I think the Hippocratic Oath is that the doctor should do what he believes to be medically necessary, and if he doesn't believe a tail is medically necessary, then I don't see how he would be obligated to give someone a tail.
I think we're getting on so many. This is so unfocused.
Is it weird that I want a tail now?
Because breast augmentation, I guess if we want to go that route, that's an example of people do it for no medical necessity whatsoever. People do it because they want big tits. I mean, and doctors, and there are doctors who perform that surgery.
Well,
you brought it might be a medical necessity for their sexual partners.
And should I don't think anyone disagrees. Like, if a transgender person wants to have a sex change surgery, should they be allowed to? I think, I think most people would say but should the taxpayer fund for it, and should medical professionals be compelled to do it? I think those are the two issues. And right now, the reason I thought the breast augmentation thing was a reasonable comparison is that the entire medical reason behind why people want to do sex change surgeries and why doctors want to do them is this idea that affirmation prevents suicide or prevents loss of quality of life. Well, there are cases, I'm sure. I don't know anybody, but I'm sure there are cases of women who are suffering from depression and bigger breasts might help them. So
sure, and I
does that become a taxpayer? Does that become a taxpayer-funded procedure? Because you could make the argument it's in the health interest of the individual. And then maybe I want a tail. Really, like
when we're talking about taxpayer funded, are we speaking in the hypothetical here? Our tax dollars paying for breast augmentations?
I think we are. I think we are speaking in the hypothetical. I don't think. I guess if you were
it's not
gonna talk
hypothetical
about
when it
the
comes back to the
military-
transgender thing, though,
Right,
because
right.
I think people do get taxpayer-funded surgeries, at least in terms of, I know they have given them in prisons, so that's
Yeah.
maybe taxpayer.
and
I mean, it is
Actually,
taxpayer-funded,
Ryan, I think you're the one who brought up the idea of, it should it be, mandatory for them to carry out these procedures to help. I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and check the tape, but, yeah.
All right.
Wayne.
Well, and the only thing I would say about this is stupid to even bring this up, because then all you got to do is say, well, what about the military? Prisoners in the United States, the courts have held, are the only people that actually have a right to health care.
What about the
and
military?
Thanks. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I guess the only thing that I feel like the reasonable thing to say would be procedures that are deemed medically necessary. And so then the question is gender assignment or affirmation, whatever they call it, is getting a sex change medically necessary?
So is the prison thing, is that, I mean, you guys probably all know more about this than I do. Is that like a normal thing that they get this to help with whatever, depression or whatever, and that, do they get transferred to a female prison if they're in a strictly male prison, or how does that work?
I don't know. Good question.
I believe in our local jail that if someone went in that was trans, jail would make accommodations for that person to not be housed. If it was a trans woman,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that she would be not housed with either sex. So I suppose that's somewhat accommodating and somewhat discriminatory, because I think she'd be put in protective custody, actually.
Right, yeah.
Which is kind of its own torture. But
Which I understand, but yeah, at what point is this like just giving, special treatment to people? Like if somebody goes in, what's stopping them from being like, trans, you put me into special treatment?
And how
I
can you
don't-
listen to
I-
one person and not another when it's that subjective? You
Sure.
can't really prove medical necessity other than someone claims it and claims that they feel a certain way, and how can you ever disprove that?
Sure. I just pragmatically, I don't think many people would request special treatment.
I would.
More of a-
I want special treatment if I ever go to jail.
Absolutely.
And I might say I'm trans if it got me that. I don't know.
I mean,
I'm
yes.
afraid of Gen Pop.
Now, yes, Ryan, I don't think too many people do that, but why wouldn't they? I absolutely would. Why wouldn't
Well,
I?
because you're basically, because you may be held in solitary, not actual solitary, but you don't get to be housed with other people.
Comfortable solitary.
Luxury.
I don't
luxury
know.
Solitary.
Can I bring my like iPad? I can do solitary if I have like my Kindle books and like Facebook.
I
goodness.
identify as somebody who has an iPad on them at all times, so
My iPad is part of me, so I'm gonna need that. Maybe they
Man.
can build it. I can get a surgery so it's like in my chest, and then I can just like Tony Stark.
right.
Just,
That's
like
what I was
open
gonna say.
my iPad chest, and then I need to use a mirror, I guess, to like.
Yes,
That-
totally off the rails, but
what a
not
difficult
completely.
question. What a difficult question. I almost
Second
feel
half
like,
of this is our Infinity War review, right?
I almost feel like the country just needs to make a policy decision and just stick with it. Like, this is how it is.
Oh, that's the worst idea I've heard.
I know, right? Just because at least then we wouldn't have to discuss it anymore.
Just so we don't have to have these conversations. Can the
President
government
Trump,
please
can you make
just
a
shut us
decision on
up?
this? Because Ryan does not want to speak about it anymore.
Yeah. So back to the mental disorder or not. So, like family concern. Like if somebody has like extreme depression and they're suicidal, like nothing about, gender or anything like that. Like if somebody has these concerns about a family member, they're allowed to step in and, help this person, possibly even by force, help them keep from killing themselves or maybe even doing damage to somebody else. is there a difference between that and somebody who is identifying as something different and is experiencing depression through that, or like where's the line there?
We need to be called on now. You've trained us.
Mark.
Oh, damn it. Man, this is like more than I have opinions on the subject that we're diving into. I think ultimately, I mean, I don't know how to address this on a governmental level. I think very little should the government be involved in this sort of thing. But on a societal and like sort of cultural level, I do think like we should try to be understanding, because I don't think most of these people are doing it to throw people into fits about bathrooms. I do think it probably does come from some deep inner turmoil, and for that reason, I think we should try. From a family or personal level, you would want to be understanding of it, but that doesn't mean if someone is very depressed or suicidal, you don't necessarily. You want to understand and listen to them, but it doesn't mean you want to reinforce the reasons. So what if someone is very depressed because they have this sort of idea that they aren't in the right body? And I don't know that it's wrong. I'm not saying what's right or wrong, because I really don't know the answer, but I don't necessarily know that it's wrong to tell them, to try to convince them that they're wrong about that, because maybe that's what's going to help them. Maybe them telling themselves that they can be confident in how they're born, they can be confident in the genitalia that they have while having these feelings and trying to work them out. It doesn't mean they need to change their body. It doesn't mean they need to change their identity. They can accept themselves for who they are. I think that might be a healthier approach. Not saying this from a psychological point of view, because I don't know, but from a point of view that makes sense to me, that might often be a better approach than just saying, yes, you should accept exactly how you feel. You should act on this, these feelings right now. You should change your body, whatever you got to do to make yourself feel better. Because often what you need to do to make yourself feel better in the moment is not what you need to do for your long-term mental well-being. What I want to do to feel better in the moment is go chug a bottle of whiskey and maybe do some other illicit things. But I don't think that's necessarily good for my long-term prospects, although it might make for a fun
Heroin
night.
and prostitutes, right?
Well, I'm not. I neither confirm nor deny.
Libertarianism. All right.
Except if my dad's listening, and then I deny.
Of course. John.
So I guess I'm confused by your question. Like
Family
do you mean,
intervention, does the family have the right ever to, intervene here and say, you're mentally unstable? Because, I mean...
You mean like physically intervene? And maybe I misunderstood the question then. I mean
yeah,
I think they might have I think a family has an obligation to try to help their family members in whatever way they can. I don't know if that if you're talking about like calling the government and saying my brother's mentally distraught and you got to do something about it. Like, I don't know, that could be a scary thing.
Sure.
That's a real thing, Mark, that you can get involuntarily committed. In Iowa, it only takes 2 affidavits about someone's imminent danger to themselves or others. And
so you're addicted to 2 people and you might be put away.
I mean, it's there are further procedural safeguards to make you actually end up getting a hearing. What a novelty.
I would hope so.
But on a temporary basis, it is possible to do it, and it's pretty scary how, I mean, really 2 people could just conspire to write these affidavits and get someone temporarily picked up. It's pretty messed up.
It would not be hard to do that either. He broke up with me. I don't like him. Let's conspire against him. Get my
I mean,
sister-in-law.
you'd be committing a crime by committing perjury,
Right.
but like.
All right. Well, John, should the family have the right to intervene? Let's say adults, like adult
Yes.
people who have this issue, quote unquote, have this, this. What do you even call it at this point? You can't call it an issue or a thing or anything.
I think parents should have the final say, and I don't want to say as an absolute.
Parents
but,
of adults.
In medical situations for kids under like 18. But if you're talking about like parents who have a kid that's in their 20s, I think they have less rights. But when you're talking about like a teenager living under their roof, I think that the parents should have the say as to whether that child gets, especially for young children, like puberty blockers or hormone treatments.
We're not to
or
kids yet. Adults.
Oh, so adults like older than 18?
Yes. Or
I think
just like
if
concerned,
you're
like
older than
brother,
18,
sister, or
I
whatever.
don't think that. I think that as parents, you would probably want to talk to them and try to help them, and because you love them. But legally speaking, I don't think that, parents can compel anything for a child older than 18, right? I mean, am I wrong?
Yeah,
I
well,
think it would be very hard legally to do that.
I mean,
Um,
if it is considered, if you
I guess
hypothetically
the
considered
situation
it,
just described, you could probably do it.
John, if there were people who believed that you were in a serious state of like contemplating like legitimate suicide, there are things that those people could do, have you protected
because
by
that's considered a mental disorder.
yeah. So
But
in my
isn't suicide or isn't like murder or something like that? Isn't that different than like people who are concerned because you are transgender?
That's what I'm
Or,
asking.
well,
like,
and I guess
That's the question.
that's what I, and that was going to be my answer, is just that if it's a moment of crisis and the basis for the crisis is rooted in their transgenderism, I guess I don't really care what the basis is. If it truly is a moment in crisis and the person's life is at stake, or they're at
yeah,
risk of harming another person, then I think that the mechanism should probably exist to ensure. I mean, even though I believe that everyone should have the right to kill themselves, probably like procedurally, like there should probably be a mechanism to make people to that the government is allowed to use the force of the law to stop someone from killing themselves in that sort of moment of crisis.
I agree with that. I mean, and it might even stop one of those non-existent school shootings you were talking about last episode.
I didn't say they were non-existent. I believe I said they don't matter or something like that.
So for the real question is, if you consider it a mental disorder, is it different from other mental disorders? Like even say a special person, somebody who is mentally retarded, I'll say, somebody who has not the same capability. A parent is allowed to step in and take care of that kid because they think that they're not of complete wellness of mind. Does a parent have the right to step in? Not even, well, not necessarily like calling the cops or anything. Do they have the right to step in and kind of take charge of the situation, or a family member or anything like that? If it's like a transgender thing and they think it's a mental disorder?
As the lawyer in the group, let me just jump in here. So what you just said reminded me of like getting a guardianship for someone who can't adequately take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would probably provide the answer to the question, which is that if the transgender is I guess I just don't I don't think that I guess I'm just not viewing the transgenderism as a sort of disability.
Sure.
or an issue mentally, because all of my answers are, well, if they had this actual condition that was somehow rooted in it, but the actual condition qualified. I mean, if someone can't take care of themselves, then and they're an adult, then another adult can step forward and ask the court to appoint that person to be the person who can't take care of themselves guardian. They're called the ward. Guardian is the guardian of the ward. So just simply being transgender, even if you think it's a mental defect, or even if you think it's a like whatever the words we're using are, even if you think it's a mental disorder, I don't think it prevents people from taking care of themselves in the same way that would justify like a sort of like a guardianship or something like that, which I think that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't even want to round up the Wolfkins. Like that, I think to me is a little too far.
Mark, anything?
I think we need the Wolfkins. I think the world needs Wolfkins.
Way to divert, guys. All right, let's talk about the kids. We keep bringing it up here. As far as like, I mean, we have, parents who it's not even necessarily the kids self-identifying. It's the parents listening to what the kids who aren't allowed to, make any other decisions in their life. The parents are like, yes, what you say as a 5-year-old, you are correct. And obviously you know everything. And I'm going to give you hormone treatment therapy and allow you to change your gender right now. And all sorts of stuff. Who wants to weigh in on that?
I kind of did already, so I don't know. I don't know how much I need to expand on it, but I do think it's very dangerous when you're going to alter the chemical growth and the hormonal levels of children in any way, shape, or form before their bodies and brains have fully developed. I mean, they say our minds don't fully develop till we're like 20 something years old now, and I really don't think you want people who are 18 years old realizing, oh shit, I wore a dress once when I was 4 and now I'm a woman, and or like now I can't have kids even. Maybe not going as extreme as having a woman, but if you get a kid hormone blockers, they might have reproductive issues later, and they might literally not be able to have children, and they might really regret that because it's something they just felt for a minute when they were kids, and then their parents, because they have some sort of cultural or political viewpoint, they jump on it and say, well, of course, Johnny, you're Juanita or whatever. You are a woman, and we should do whatever it takes to make sure
You're
you
also
fulfill that
Mexican now,
destiny.
apparently.
I don't know why. I was like, Johnny, what's the female? It's Juanita. Okay. So I do think it's very dangerous when it becomes to children. And as with many things, I think you need to reach a certain level of maturity before you can make certain decisions in life. One of those should probably be if you permanently alter your body chemistry or your sexual organs. I just think that's very dangerous. Now, when that comes to law, it gets trickier, of course. But generally, I think you should not be. I almost think at a certain age you could say it's child abuse when a parent does that to a child. Definitely. I mean, if you do it to a 7-year-old, that's child abuse. I mean, that 7-year-old is not making a decision that is rational or anything. And they're making a decision based on a combination of something they felt or did in the moment combined with their parents pushing it. Because obviously a child like that, I don't know what a hormone blocker was when I was 7. Did you guys? I mean, that is coming from the parents.
Yeah.
There's data out there to show that more than 80% of kids desist from gender dysphoria. So the idea that we're going to, do what Mark was talking about and potentially permanently take away their ability to reproduce, permanently alter their lives, permanently lock them into a state of gender dysphoria for the rest of their lives. I mean, I just think it's morally wrong, and it's just really a reprehensible way to treat children. But that being said, and I think of situations where I don't know if I should talk about a story. I won't say where I saw the clip, but I saw a clip on the news, and it was someone I knew who became transgender female and had kids when he was a male, and they were celebrating some show that had transgender actors on there, and anyway, they showed, and not only was he a transgender female, but now his kid from a previous marriage was also identifying as transgender, and they talked about potentially putting them on their hormones, and they were really excited about this. And to me, I'm just like, that is so fucked up. Like, because the kid is almost, I just think it's so irresponsible. I guess there's a real small percentage chance that the kid's actually suffering from gender dysphoria, but what is almost a sure thing is that, he saw his dad mom and was like, oh, this is a great idea. I want to be like my dad mom. And I just think it's really, we're not thinking clearly. Like, we're thinking politically, and we're thinking about, like, we want to be supportive of LGBT rights or whatever, but like, it's really not something we're thinking through, and we're ruining a lot of lives doing it.
It's fair.
Sorry for ranting.
I have a couple things I wrote down real quick. First of all, I think that societally or politically, I think that we allow parents to make life-altering decisions for their children every day, not just in the medical field. Some parents choose to homeschool their children. Some parents choose to forbid their children from talking to children of other, some children raise their kids to be, or some parents raise their children to be racists. Some parents force their children into certain churches or religious beliefs, and those have lifelong effects as well. Some parents have to make very tough medical decisions, which, I don't know, a kid gets a brain tumor, and the parents have to choose between Operation A, Operation B. Let's say Operation A has a better reward but higher risk.
Or
the
some
parent
choose
has
to just pray harder. I mean, you got to throw
Indeed.
that in there.
Indeed, sure. I mean, the parent has to make a decision. The parent has to try to make the best decision they can based on the information available to them. And sometimes the parents make a decision which results in a life-altering, either for better or for worse, result for their kid. Sorry, John. I hate to be saying all this stuff when you just had a kid, but like,
Oh, you're fine. You're
I'm
fine.
not trying to scare you or anything, but so it seems to me that children never have the right to make, except for abortions, medical decisions about themselves.
Just gonna sneak
The
that
parents.
in
Well, I
Except
kind
for
of
the very non-controversial abortions.
well, I was trying to do it in fairness to John because it seems like something I would say if I was him. I mean, we have some laws that say that if you're greater than age X, you can get an abortion without your parents' knowledge.
there.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be an outlier. That's a completely different topic. But anyways, I was just trying to be fair to John. So a parent has to make the best decision the parent can, and I think that we have to leave those decisions up to the parents, just like we do. I mean, otherwise we end up having doctors and governments make healthcare decisions for children despite their parents' wishes. I'm not going to say anything further on that topic. John and Dan and potentially Mark. What's that kid's last name, or what was that kid's last name? Alfie what? Alfie Evans. Yeah. Hashtag Alfie. Probably not okay to say hashtag Alfie when he just died.
Too late. It's on tape.
Yep.
We all know you're heartless now.
Okay, so and then the only other thing I would say is, so in connection with that, I really hope that it's not the case that a kid makes an offhanded comment and that without any further confirmation or indication that launches a lifelong chemical change. Now, I could see some progressive parents who are trying so hard to make sure that they don't shame or affect their child negatively, that they almost like encourage that sort of behavior, which causes it to occur more, which causes them to say, let's get this transgender stuff going. I understand that could happen, but I would hope that the people who are actually making those decisions for their children are making the best decision they can and trying not to influence the situation. And I would just say that this isn't a call out or anything, but calling it child abuse, I don't think is totally fair, because I could easily say that when your kid every single day is being psychologically suffering because he or she feels that he or she is in the wrong body, not doing something could also be considered. And not doing something could have the same sorts of long-term effects. If your parents never listened to you for 18 years and they never allowed you to get the therapy, either psychological or chemical or whatever, that could also have lifelong effects. So my very long-winded answer to this question is, I think you got it. Just like every other child rearing or most other child rearing decisions, leave it up to the parents and hope that they will make the best decision they can. Now, if I have a kid and my kid and my little Danny says I want to become Danielle, and it's
Thank you for naming your child after me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Then I feel that what I would probably do is try to explain to the child, which is a pointless endeavor, the very long-term consequences. Probably not at age 7. I probably would have him see a therapist for a while and let him make the decision once he becomes of age.
Mark.
Yeah, I mean, if he still wants to do it 11 years later when he's 18, then you could probably say, all right, maybe it's, you're an adult, so you can do whatever you want.
But you know what? Maybe making him wait that long has already scarred him a ton. I don't know. It's a tough question.
That's definitely the argument that that advocates on that side would definitely say, is that they respond to the desistance numbers by saying, well, what about the 20%? And I mean, that's a fair question. I mean, this is why it's really a difficult thing, because what you're talking about here, and parents are put in such an impossible situation. You're talking about, and doctors are telling you, hey, if you don't take care of this, if your kid, continues to go down this road, the odds of them killing themselves are through the roof. And, we talked about this, we touched on it earlier, but is that because of society, or is that because it's a related condition to, to being transgender? I don't know if there's data on that, but it's an unenviable situation. So I guess maybe I shouldn't be so cavalier on it, because I do think parental rights are really important. To me, objectively speaking, I think that the incident I described seems like child abuse. I think that parents that go down that road are certainly making the wrong decision for their children. But you're right. Maybe it's a little too aggressive to say child abuse. I don't know.
Yeah, and a good thing to point out is, Ryan, you did say that you would hold off and at least have them seek therapy if they felt that way. So I think that's really important, so they can actually form their thoughts. Not even that they necessarily can, because their brains aren't developed, but I think that that's really important, because, if you feel like you're a wolf when you're 6, what are the odds that your parent's going to care about that? And if they're kind enough to help you through that and help you seek therapy for it, I think that's important. Mark, do you want to weigh in?
I think I said all I got on this one, which I don't think I've said very often in life, really.
You did it.
You finally got to the end of a rabbit hole for me. I mean, at the end of the day, I do agree. It's just it's a difficult issue to address, and I'm glad we all kind of see that it's complicated, because I think that's one of the more difficult things about most political dialogue today. Most people don't approach these subjects as if they're complicated. They approach them like it's, here's what we got to do about the bathrooms and end the bathrooms, or here's what we got to do with this, and no kids should get, and maybe there is a right or wrong answer somewhere, but generally we're talking about an issue that we don't all nobody can really fully understand why people feel this way. And I don't think most people feel that way for malicious reasons. So we should try to understand it while trying to sort out how this relates to our conception of individual rights and how laws should intertwine with this sort of things. But I think the best we can do is to try to find a balance. And I hate the word balance because it seems so non-committal to a side. But when it comes to something like this, where it's people who are really just ultimately going to affect their own body, you kind of want to let them express themselves as much as you can, and I shouldn't even be letting when we're talking about adults, but I'm also factoring the children thing here. Mm-hmm. While at the same time, when we're talking about, when you're combining that with raising children and the issues of rights, you need to do it in the way that isn't discriminatory and is not, but is also not, refraining people from becoming who they are. And I don't know the best way to do that. But I do feel strongly that giving children hormone blockers is not the best way to do that.
Sure.
Yeah, and you know what? In the spirit of being fair and balanced,
Fox News.
Part of a parent's responsibility is to help their child not make cringe-worthy decisions, and in a lot of places, allowing your male kid to go to school in a dress would result in a lot of social stigma and bullying. And maybe if that kid was allowed to do that for a long time, but eventually decided against it, that kid might be pissed at his parents. Like, why did you let me do that? That's so embarrassing. I was picked on for years. Like, why did you let me do that? You know what I mean? It's tough.
Did you guys see the episode of Roseanne that everyone was talking about relating to this?
Episode 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It was great.
So basically, I'll just recap it real quick without going too long. But the kid, Roseanne's grandson, was loving to dress up in kind of flamboyant, girly clothes, sometimes a dress, but mostly just really fun colors. And they were all worried about him, and was he transgender, that sort of thing. And then Roseanne had a conversation with him and asked him hey, and he's 7 years old. Hey, do you think you're a girl? And he's like, no, I'm a boy. And she's like, well, why are you wearing these clothes? And he's like, well, that's what makes me happy. Okay. I think there's a huge difference between, social, affirmation of what your kid's doing and maybe guiding them, but kind of recognizing they're being a unique individual. And then, as Mark said, puberty blockers. And it's a huge difference, because I think that there's serious consequences to medical procedures that, I ultimately, like, there might be the social stigma, but if your kid wears, a colorful scarf to school, like, he's going to be okay when he's in his 20s. He's going to be fine, and I just think
the age-old first step into sexual deviancy.
the colorful scarf. I'll be honest, I wore a colorful scarf at the time or two. So, but anyway.
Right. Well, we're kind of getting off topic and more into another episode that I plan on doing here soon.
Oh, the Roseanne episode is next. Great.
Right.
Oh,
No. But, well, yeah, I won't get into it too much. But this has been a great conversation, and I'm glad that we found something that we can all kind of have differing points on and show different sides of different things. And it's not an easy topic, for sure, and I think we would all agree on that there are gray areas, there are, quote-unquote slippery slopes and, different things where we got to figure out how this works. And I think that's important for everybody to, mull over. But I'll give you guys each one final thought if you have one. If not, that's totally fine. But your thoughts on transgenderism as a whole. Ryan, I'll let you go first.
Okay, I would just encourage people to practice compassion in their lives. If that involves treating someone with respect, even though you don't quite understand
Don't be
their
a dick.
point of view or identity, whatever, just try to exercise compassion. Sub point, gotta give I hate to do this, but I gotta give John's boy Trump a shout out on the old his potential role in helping the absolutely historic Korean stuff that's going on right now. When I watched Kim Il,
You're not gonna do this again. You're not going to.
what's the one's name?
You're not going to cut in on my outro and bring up a totally new conversation and bring it another hour.
Well, I'm just as per usual. I'm trying to be fair and give Trump credit when credit's due. And I mean, Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize without actually doing anything.
Are you guys down to record tomorrow like we were supposed to? We can do a Korea episode if Ryan so insists.
Yeah, sorry. Just don't be a dick, be a dude.
I need more than 24 hours between these, I think.
Yeah,
I agree. Mark,
I kind of like
thoughts.
not knowing the topic going in, though.
That's the idea. Yep.
I know, I like that better.
No prep.
Completely unprepared for this.
That's the idea. Mark, final thoughts on transgenderism.
At the end of the day, I'm going to go back to my libertarian propaganda and say, when it comes to transgenderism or any issue, and at least when it comes to adults now, of course, I'm not convinced that adult is necessarily the day you turn 18. Maybe it's earlier, maybe it's later. That's a tough conversation and maybe a whole different episode. But generally, adults should be allowed to do whatever they want if it doesn't harm other people, which would, of course, include people that want to dress differently, alter their bodies, what have you. It becomes much different scenario when we're talking about very young children, and to the point where I would actually call it child abuse to change the body of a child at a certain age. I do think there's a gray area in the middle where do we know when that child becomes the adult? Is it 14? Is it 15? Is it 16, 17, 18? And that, I think, is not anything that society at large can ever come to an answer on. But that really is the distinguishing factor. When does it become someone who doesn't really fully understand what they're doing and is being actually abused by changing their body? And when does that person become an adult that can make that decision on their own? And I don't know how we can ever come to the exact day in time when that change occurs, because there isn't an exact day. It is a sort of it's a timeline, and I don't the best we can do is just sort of, I don't know, I guess cultural norms sort of kick in at some point when we, as a society, in whatever areas we live, we sort of agree when someone's an adult. And I guess that's the best we can do about where the line should be. But I'm not going to act like there's some objective measure of that.
Mark, real quick, is there any scenario that you can imagine where, let's say, a 10-year-old parents allow their 10-year-old to have altercations physically done like that? Where
you had a chance
for
this question a long time ago.
Where you would not call it child abuse, or are you stating categorically that you believe it's child abuse?
It's very hard to imagine someone that young being able to make that decision. If you're going to say 10, if you said 13, 14, I'm starting to waver a bit. I mean, I don't think it's easy, but 10 specifically feels too young for me. But I admit that's a feeling. Like, I can't point to some set of data that proves that. Okay,
all right. I was just curious because
it's a valid,
you just used the term again, and I just was curious.
Yeah, I mean, I use 7 because that's, to me, 7 seems easy at first, and it gets more difficult the closer you get to 18, 19, 20.
Sure.
All right, John, final thoughts.
Just going off that, to me, I think the age of sexual consent and the age of that are similar. So
They should
I
probably
wouldn't
be
say
around the same thing. Yeah.
I wouldn't say 13, 14, but I think it's kind of like.
But you know,
something
that's
similar
our
to
modern society in many ways. A couple hundred years ago, that wasn't weird. So I mean, I agree with you, but do I agree with you just because that's how society is now? A couple hundred years ago, a lot of people wouldn't think that was weird.
Right.
So it was were they wrong, or are we right? I mean, we think yes, but I mean, I don't know.
To be an ancient Greek.
For the record, I don't think 14-year-olds.
That's how we all feel, right?
Vomitoriums. That's really what I wanted. Or was that the Romans? I feel like they all did.
John,
But,
continue.
on Ryan brought up compassion. I think that is actually a really important point, because I think it is easy, like when discussing this issue, especially trans versus say gay issues. We all know gay people, and I think maybe we don't all know trans people. And so I think it does become a little bit more easy to stereotype or what have you. But it is a complicated issue, and I think that I mean, really, like I think people just need to kind of come to realize that it's not an easy issue. And what's happening in our society right now is that, you know, there's kind of two sides on it, right? Like, and you know, the one side is saying that if you're against trans on anything, you must be a horrible bigot and a horrible person. I think that is going way too far. I think people have really like legitimate concerns. And as I brought up earlier, I mean, public accommodations laws, if gender identity is considered a protected class, it will have insane ramifications on society as a whole. And so that's my biggest concern with it. But to all you Wolfkin out there, I mean, you just keep doing you, okay? I'm with you.
John is secretly a Wolfkin on the weekends.
As a libertarian, I'd also like to state my support for Wolfkin rights.
Well,
as long as they're, I don't know, 13, 14, 15.
Well, and they can't shit on public property. That's my big thing. Like, don't do that, but everything else is fine.
Unless it's the cultural norm in their community.
In their pack.
As a former otherkin bully, I will embrace my nostalgia.
What did you give up during this show?
I will embrace my nostalgia and say, y'all are fucked up.
All right, I'll give everyone a chance to say plugs. I know that Mark will probably be the only one. So, Mark, tell everybody about your show that they've never heard of before.
It's a little program called Lions of Liberty. You might have heard a few of those people on this program, and you might even hear more down the road. If you want to hear more about the interesting and insightful things that I have said throughout this program, that would be a great way to start. lionsofliberty.com. You know how social media works. It's all over there, too. At Lions of Liberty on Twitter.
Cool.
Etc.
John, Mark, or John, Ryan,
John,
any
Mark.
plugs?
We merge into
I
one.
mean, I would say follow me on Twitter at John Schweppe for the hottest of hot takes. Hashtag justice for Alfie. And Facebook, I would say, is where I'm probably a little bit more reasonable. You guys have to check out the forum. I'm going to plug it for Dan, but the System is Down forum. What is it? tsidpod.com/forum. Is that right?
Got it.
That place.
good
Okay,
spot.
first of all, it was doing so much. We were getting a lot more commentary a few weeks ago, and Dan's had some really interesting episodes lately. I think I have to say interesting because I don't want to like lose my career.
Sure.
But you guys got to check it out, and then we need to have some more conversation. I mean, that's what was like really awesome about the group when it started. So I'm hoping that after this episode, we get some conversation about transgenderism, and it'll be really good.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the plug. That saves me the effort at the end of the show. So, Ryan, you got anything?
My plug would be to look for Dan's and my upcoming music release.
Absolutely.
Name to be determined, date to be determined,
And content to be determined.
And you know what? I would encourage someone to talk to a trans person.
Right?
Maybe you'd find out a little bit.
Absolutely.
I have talked to a few of them, but I haven't learned
You're cutting out. What'd you say?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was mumbling. I mean, I've talked to a couple, and I still am not where. And it's so hard to sympathize with something that's so different from yourself. But
Sure.
taking steps to be able to sympathize.
You're cutting out even more now.
I'm sorry. Taking steps.
Beautiful.
To,
It was
taking,
beautiful.
Taking steps to sympathize with other people's experiences, I think.
Yes, I would absolutely agree, and I think that everyone would agree that, as we've said many times, this is not a topic that is like a solid yes or no. There's definitely some middle ground that needs to be figured out for everyone personally, and at the very least, I would say that we can all agree. Don't be a dick. Anybody disagree with that?
No.
The other
I
can.
mean, sometimes you can be a dick.
In this
But
issue,
of course, Mark is coming in. You have a right to be a dick, though.
I mean, I will. I I might not agree that you should be a dick, but damn it, I'll defend your right to be one.
Right.
I think that's the phrase.
The government shouldn't stop me from being a dick, but I also shouldn't be one. All right. Well, John, Mark, and Ryan, thank you guys so much for coming on. I hope to do it again soon, and thank you guys for being here. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did and always do. And as always, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think on the topic, your thoughts. You can post comments depending on where you're listening to this. If you're on like YouTube or something like that, just post a comment in the comment section below. Or better yet, if you want to talk to me and a bunch of other downers directly, we've got a club, we've got a group. It's a forum on Facebook right now. You can find it by going to tsidpod.com/forum. It's just a place for a bunch of weirdos to share weird ideas and, have some civil discussions and disagreements back and forth without the name calling and shouting that you find on the regular Facebook world. So check that out, tsidpod.com/forum. And sometime this week, if you'd be so kind as to, share the show with a friend, tell somebody about it. Tell somebody about, the topics that we were talking about, and maybe have an uncomfortable conversation with somebody that you disagree with and be a civil human being to them. Not too much to ask, I'd say, but, conversation is dead, and we're trying to revive it. So help me out. Go out and talk to somebody, have a conversation with them. You won't regret it. I guarantee it. And as I said at the top of the show, we are now on Patreon at patreon.com/thesystemIsDown, and you get a bunch of bonus audio and video content that nobody else gets. You get to be a part of the exclusive Downers Club group. All sorts of things. All sorts of things. You've heard the spiel, unless you haven't been paying attention, in which case you don't deserve to be in the Downers Club, but I'll allow it. Patreon.com/thesystemIsDown, $5 a month or better. Some of the higher levels, there are more incentives like free t-shirts, free merch, sending out random DVDs and things like that. Lots of fun stuff. So go check that out and be a doll. That'd be super awesome. Also, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all the things. Go like us, share us, subscribe to us, hit the notification bells, do all those things, all those fun things that you guys love to do for everything that you enjoy partaking in for free, because, we're a greedy culture and everything must be free. The least you could do is, write me a review on iTunes, give me 5 stars, let people know what they're getting into here, and share it around. Cost you nothing. And I put a lot of work into this show, gonna be honest. But I enjoy it, and I enjoy that you guys enjoy it. I love you guys. It's been an absolute blast lately, getting more and more of these interviews out, making some big plans to up the production quality in the very, very near future. So let's keep building this thing together. Let's keep having the uncomfortable dialogue, and let's keep staying weird. That's what we're all about here. So do all that, and if you'll have me, as always, of course you know, I'll be back here in your ears first thing next Monday morning with some more uncomfortable content. Until then, weirdos, question everything and stay uncomfortable. Thanks. This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.